Hi, and welcome back to my channel where we like to craft and tell a true crime story at the same time. So we're going to do a craft and a crime. If you've all been watching me or my shorts, we made this cup. So we're going to finish this cup today with our true crime story. And today we are going to be talking about H.H. Holmes, which was the first known serial killer in America. So just before we start our story, let's just get a couple of things out of the way. If you could please just like and subscribe to my channel. I am five subscribers away from my goal. I am trying to get to 50 subscribers because then I can go live on YouTube. And I would like to do another live and true crime story with you guys. I did one a couple of months ago, so I would like to do another one, but I'd like to do it on YouTube. So I need those 5 more subscribers, so please hit the like and subscribe. Once we get to that 50 subscribers, we're going to do a giveaway. So if you could just do that, and let's see if we can get your name in a giveaway. So today we're going to be making this cup, and we are going to be making it out of H.H. Holmes, like newspaper clippings and stuff like that. So let's get started on our story. So H.H. Holmes was born as Herman Weber Mudgett on May 16th of 1961, and to the parents that descended from one of the first settlers in America. So he was a descendant of some of the first people that settled here. Actually, I should have done this one first. Sorry. As a child, he was great at academics and graduated at 16. He did face bullying as a child, and in a book that Holmes wrote himself, he had developed an obsession with death when classmates forced him into the local, when they forced him into the local doctor's office and forced him to be face to face with one of the skeletons there in the office, and then they put the skeleton's hands on the on his face and all around just to scare him, again because they were bullying him. So he later wrote that this, while it was terrifying at the time that it happened, it later is something that became very intriguing to him. So he believes that it's what sculpted how he turned out. In July of 1878, Holmes married Clara Lovering, and they had a son in February of 1880, Robert Mudgett. It was later said by housemates, so when he was in college, it was later said by housemates that he was extremely abusive to Clara. And then in 1984, just before he was graduating college, Clara left and she moved back to New Hampshire, where she was from, with their son, and then really didn't have any contact with H.H. Holmes after that. And then in 1879, he enrolled in the University of Vermont. So he's married to Clara, and he enrolled in the University of Vermont. In Vermont, and then he married Clara, and then he enrolled in 1982. He transferred to the University of Michigan in the Department of Medicine and Surgery. Graduating in 1984, so then Clara had left him a year before he graduated. While enrolled at the university, he worked worked in the anatomy lab under his professor, and the two were said to be body snatching to supply medical cadavers. He did go on to be an apprentice in New Hampshire under Nahum Waite. During his time in New Hampshire, he was accused of committing several insurance frauds by taking out policies on people. So he would take out insurance policies on people, and then he would use cadavers to prove that they were dead, and he would collect the insurance money. And it is suspected that in some of the incidences that he didn't actually use a cadaver. He actually killed the people and collected the insurance money, but that was never 100% proved. So those people were dead. He was also suspected of killing and collecting the money. This This story here, though, when I read that, it reminded me of the most recent body snatching case of Jonathan. I think his last name is Gerlach. If you look it up, he's like in jail now, but he was body snatching. So he was stealing bodies out of graveyards just recently, and then he was caught with a bag coming out of the graveyard with 2 infant bodies in it, but he was selling the bodies online and using YouTube, which I find completely insane because I was on YouTube for a whole day and they flagged me because I had a hoodie that said, it's my kid's hoodie, that said it's all fun and games until the police show up, and then it's hide and seek. And they literally flagged me for that hoodie. So I was on there for less than 24 hours and got flagged. And this guy is selling dead bodies that he's taken out of graveyards on the internet. So it's kind of crazy to me. But yeah, so that's a most recent body snatching thing. You should go look it up. But anyway, so after graduation, Holmes moved to New York. And the rumors spread that he was the last person seen with a young boy, and Holmes claimed, nope, it wasn't me. He went back home to Massachusetts, and no investigation took place. But Holmes quickly left town, and, left before they could do any kind of investigating. He traveled to Philadelphia, where he worked in a hospital for just a few days, and then he quit. I couldn't really find information on why he quit. Then he took a job at a drugstore, and while he was working there, a boy died after taking medication that was bought at the drugstore. Now, again, he said that had nothing to do with me. I didn't do it, and he quickly left town and was gone. So, while the walls are closing in on his past crimes, in August of 1886, he moved to Chicago and changed his name from Henry Howard Holmes, also known as H.H. Holmes. Upon his arrival in Chicago, he started working in a drugstore on 63rd Street in Elmwood section of Chicago. He eventually bought the drugstore, supposedly, bought the drugstore, and then he ended up buying the empty lot of property across the street from the drugstore. Still in Inglewood. He eventually bought the drugstore in 1987. He would start the construction of the H.H. Holmes Hotel, but it would then become known as the Murder Castle. So upon his arrival in Chicago in 1886, Holmes married his second wife, Martha Belknap, I believe is how you say her last name, and had a daughter, Lucy. So now he is still married to his first wife, who left and took their son. And now he's gotten to Chicago and married his second wife, they eventually ended up having a daughter. So Holmes, while he was building his murder castle, is what it got nicknamed. He lived in Wilmot, Illinois with Meredith and Lucy. So he lived in Wilmot with his second wife and daughter, but he was always in Chicago because of business needs. So he pretty much was in Chicago and they lived there, but he would travel back and forth according to the resources that I've seen. Now, just to kind of hint on what we're doing with our cup. So this is, we'll get to this part of the story, but this is pictures that were drawn by H.H. Holmes in his murder trial. So this is pictures of some of the presumed victims and the judge at his trial. So we're going to continue to do that. We've got a couple of more pieces here, and then I have some of these things that I might stick on there, but I don't know yet. So anyway, that's going to be our cup. So keep watching for the cup. All right, so back to our story. So Holmes was constructing the mansion, and he said it was said, like, I found a lot of articles that said it was huge and ugly. But on the first floor of the what would be the hotel was businesses. So he had opened up a second pharmacy, and then he had just storefronts that people could rent and run businesses out of on the first floor. The second floor is where things get a little strange. So on the second floor, it was built as a hotel, but later found to have been allegedly full of asphyxiation chambers. I can't say that word very well. So the doors that it would have doors that opened, but led to nowhere. There'd be a brick wall, and it had staircases that also led to nowhere. You would just hit the roof. So it was just weird all the way around. It had stairs going nowhere, doors going nowhere, and then he also had hidden chambers around on the second floor. It was said in the articles that I read that he was using those as rooms to hide like furniture, part of his scams that he was doing. So he would buy things and not want to pay for them. So I don't know if you'd get them on loans or how he would do it, but he would have them delivered. He wouldn't want to pay for them, and then he'd hide them in rooms so that the debt collectors couldn't come and take them. So that's what the hidden rooms were for. And then it also had a chute. So in his bedroom, it had alarms, and it was said that those alarms or chimes or something like that would go off when people were coming down the hallway, or if, you know, something was going on. But he also had, like, I found a couple of sources. So a lot of these resources that are found are from the tabloids back then that were called, I think it's yellow journalism is what they called it, and they would tell fake stories or add things in, kind of like the news today, just to get you to watch the show or read the news. Back then it would be read the newspaper. So it was said that he had a secret chamber in his room, and then some people said that it's not a secret chamber, it was just in his room or in the hall. But anyway, it was a chute that was not used for laundry. It was said to be used for bodies that would go straight down to the basement morgue. So he had a morgue downstairs. We'll get to that part later, but this chute was used for bodies, supposedly. So the third floor contained apartments. So the second floor, it had over 100 plus rooms with no windows. Again, very strange. The third floor then was apartments where new residents, like new people coming to Chicago. So this was all being built up around the time where Chicago was rebuilding after the Great Fire of Chicago. So people were coming there to rebuild their lives. So the third floor was made up of apartments for people to rent while they were coming to the big windy city to get their new life started. And it is believed that some of those residents were actually victims to the cadaver scams that H.H. Holmes was running. So even when he moved back to Chicago, it was believed that he was still running the scam. So he would, again, take out insurance. Now he's changed his name, remember, and so he would still take out insurance policies on people and either kill them or pretend or fake their death by using a cadaver. I also read in parts in some of my things that he was selling these bones and these, so he would kill the victim, strip them of all their skin, and then sell their bones. So another crazy part to what he was doing. The even crazier part, though, is that he's such a scam artist that he didn't actually pay for this building to be built. Not the first, not the second, not the third story at all. He quite often was swapping contractors, or they would call them builders then, but swapping builders because he wouldn't pay them. So they would either quit or he would fire them or whatever the case may be. But he never paid them. So he got this building built for free. Another source that I read also said that he was switching builders so much, though, also to keep up the where not everyone knew what was going on there. So they didn't know that there was, you'd bring a new builder in and they're not working on a certain part of the floor. They don't know that there's gas chamber rooms or rooms with no windows or, you know, all of that. So it was how he was keeping his secret by swapping builders. Now, which one of those is true, I have no clue, but I have found multiple sources that said that he just wasn't paying his builders. And he later ended up moving somewhere else and did the exact same thing. So I'm pretty sure he just wasn't paying people when he was having them build things. After the completion, so the construction was completed in 1892, but in 1894 the police would be discovering the true horrors of the home while Holmes was behind bars. So after the completion of the mansion, he was still married to both of his wives and claiming a mistress named Minnie Williams. His wife, as his wife. So when he was in Chicago, this mistress, Minnie Wilson, is who he would tell people was his wife. As his scams and fraud was starting to catch up with him in Chicago, he went on the run again. And in January of 1894, he married Georgia Yoke, so now his third wife, in Denver, Colorado. Then finally, his crimes caught up to him when he was arrested on November 17th of 1894 in Boston. So now he's traveled through Chicago, ran a scam. So he's running all of that scam in New Hampshire before, got to Chicago running even more of a scam after he changed his name. It's starting to catch up with him again. Rumors are starting to spread, not paying builders, hiding furniture, and the cadaver thing again. People coming up missing from his hotel was part of the scam. So everything's catching up with him and he goes on the run again. Most of Holmes' notorious crimes took place during the 1893 Chicago World Fair. So the Chicago World Fair is kind of like, as I was reading it, I kind of envisioned it as like, kind of like our Olympics, but it's not Olympics. Like they have like a fair and food, and it's like a huge carnival. But it's people from all over the world, all different countries coming in to this World Fair, from what I read. So I read briefly about it, but anyway, it's like a huge thing. Chicago won, so it's kind of like the Olympics where it gets held in a different country or a different city or whatever every time we do it. And Chicago won the chance to have it multiple times in a row from what I was reading. But the fair of 1893 is believed to be, you know, one of the ones that H.H. Holmes was most active in with his killing. So travelers would come in, stay at the hotel just to participate in the festivities, and then he would kill them. And so I found several different things. So one is he would show them to their rooms, right? So you're being shown to your room, and he would then lock them in. So now remember, these windows, there's no windows. And then he would turn the gas on, and he would listen to their screams, and it said that some rooms had like little peepholes so he could watch them asphyxiate as they died. So again, it's all like, in this time, there's not a lot of record other than what you would find in tabloids that were probably inflated. But it was said that he would turn the gas on and watch them die. He would lock them in the rooms, watch them, and listening to them die. He would then strip the bodies of all the flesh and sell the skeletons. So that's what we were talking about earlier. He'd put them down the chute, send them to the morgue, and he would, you know, sell their skeletons. Holmes later claimed, so later on, like Holmes did write a book later, while he was in jail waiting to, but he claimed later that he would suffocate victims using an overdose of chloroform or gas fumes while they were locked in airless vaults. So these rooms also had steel walls, so they're not wooden walls, they were steel walls, so they really was like a gas chamber. And he claimed that he killed people. He also did claim that he killed people by starving them. And then he also claimed that he had killed some people. He had killed some people by starving them and burning them alive in the hotel. So when I was looking all of this stuff up, he had a body-sized furnace down in the basement. And I think later in my story here, I have it written down, but it says that when they arrested him, you know, they found bone fragments in there. And of course, back then they didn't have DNA. They didn't have all of that stuff to determine, you know, like if you know, who it could be. So like, yeah, it could be a human bone, but who is it? They didn't have that kind of stuff back then. So they wouldn't be. Let's talk about his wives though. So H.H. Holmes is a scam artist, and his first wife, so when he married his second wife, I found that he did try to divorce his first wife, but it was kind of hard, but he never did divorce her. He didn't find her or serve her with the papers. It's also not known if she ever even knew that he had filed, because again, that wife did not have anything to do with him after they split up. Now, you might be asking, how did these scams and assumed murders take him to the first serial killer of America? So Holmes confessed to over 27 killings, and only 8 were able to be confirmed. I'm trying to, where should we put this one? Let's take a little pause and look at how our cup is going. Oh, well, that's too late. I'm going to stick it there. So we are going to do an overlay here. I don't know that I like what I just did, but it's too late now. It's there. So let's see. Let me see what you guys think about this. Sorry, I was concentrating a little bit on the cup. So this is what we have so far for our cup. We're going to have to fill in some of those gaps a little bit with some stuff, but I think we can do it. Okay, so I'm going to let that sit for a minute. It's got a lot of glue kind of hanging out on it. We're going to make something. Okay, so anyway, so he was, I'm going to read these to you. So let's see. So his confessed killings. So he confessed, so again, to 27 killings, but only 8 of those were confirmed, like we said. So Dr. Robert Leacock was allegedly murdered by Holmes in 1886 for insurance money, as detailed early in the article, or earlier when we were talking about. However, Leacock actually died of natural causes on October 5th of 1889 in Canada. I'm not sure how to say that. So it was proven that H.H. Holmes actually did not kill him, even though he was claiming that he did. So again, you know, he is claiming that he's murdered people that he actually did not murder. Rogers of Morningtown, West Virginia, was allegedly killed by Holmes in 1888. However, the supposed victim was later found alive. So again, he says he killed him, but he didn't. Lizzie, a domestic worker in the Castle and Restaurant, was allegedly smothered in the vault because Holmes believed his janitor, Quinlan, which was the keeper of the hotel, was interested in her. So he killed her just because he thought that his groundskeeper was interested in her. Rogers, a banker from Northwest Wisconsin, was allegedly murdered by Holmes in 1881 with help from an unnamed accomplice. No evidence supported his claim, and there is no disappearance of the wealthy man from Northwest Wisconsin town. So again, don't know if that's true, but he claims that it is. Julia Connor and her unborn child, Pearl Connor, were murdered by Holmes on Christmas of 1881. So that murder was confirmed. So Julia Connor was known to be one of his mistresses, and the husband of Julia found out about their affair, and he left Julia and Pearl there, and then she continued her relationship with Holmes, and it is believed that he killed her when he was performing an abortion on her, and then later killed Pearl as well. Virginia Ann Bett died suddenly in her home 1 block from the Holmes Castle on February 8th of 1892. Holmes claimed to have poisoned her either to cancel a debt or to watch her die. So again, who knows if that's true. It does say that the murder is probable for that one. Emmeline Cargrand was murdered by Holmes in 1882 or 1892. Murder was confirmed. It doesn't say how he died. Sarah Cook and her unborn child, along with Cook's niece, Miss Mary Harvard Camp of Hilton, Ontario, were allegedly smothered in the vault. No person by that name was ever known there, so they don't know if that's an unconfirmed death. Roseanne Van Jessend, referred to in the newspapers as Anne Van Tessend, the murdered by Holmes. The victim was actually Emily Van Tessel, killed in 1882. That murder was confirmed. Robert Lantrum, a janitor in the castle who knew of Holmes' insurance scams, was allegedly starved, so that's where he starved somebody, and killed by Holmes. The Chicago Daily reported that authorities had encountered someone else by the name of Robert Lantmer, who worked as a flagman at the nearby railroad crossing, and Holmes included labor among those still living in his own story. Claim unconfirmed. Eva Gertrude Connor of Iowa died July 18th of 1892. She was the sister-in-law of Julia Connor, so that was his mistress, and worked for Holmes for only 3 weeks before leaving the home, where she died 7 weeks later with something to do with her heart. It says the murder was unlikely due to timing. Sorry, we're gonna find these. Okay, Kate Durkee was allegedly killed by Holmes. Let's see, where did I go? Allegedly killed by Holmes in 1892. However, she later turned up very much alive, so he didn't kill her. L. Warner, owner of a glass factory bought by Holmes, was allegedly burned alive by Holmes in the basement kindling. However, Warner later turned up very much alive. Claim unproven. So let's talk about that for a second. So he also had bought another property, the factory, and it was suspected that he was burning people there, so he was getting rid of bodies there as well. Again, unconfirmed, but he did own another property that was a glass factory where they said that he was burning bodies, or burning dead bodies. An unnamed wealthy woman was allegedly killed in late 1893. This woman was tainted of Holmes and the castle, and was supposedly killed by Holmes in an accomplice to Holmes, who could gain control over their married stuff. So he wasn't married to her, but somehow she could stake claim to something of his. So there was an insufficient information to confirm or deny these events. So who knows if he really killed her or not, but it sounds like she was able to take claim to some of his stuff. And then Minnie Williams and Nanny Williams were murdered by Holmes in 1893. In his confessions, Holmes claimed that he killed Minnie Williams, poisoning and burying her. When the castle was investigated, burned clothing that was believed to belong to Minnie Williams was found. John Davis of Greenville, Pennsylvania, who went to visit in 1893's World Fair and vanished, was declared legally dead in 1920. The remains found in Lake County in 1919 may have belonged to Nanny Williams and John Davis. And those murders were confirmed. But the connection was not proven. An unnamed victim who was a tenant of Holmes was allegedly killed during the Chicago explosion. So during the World Fair, he was thought to be killed then in 1893. The World's explosion, or Columbian explosion is what it was also known as, the World Fair, closed on October 30th of 1893, providing a timeline anchor of the story. Although Holmes provided additional details on how to find the man's name, no such victim was ever identified. So they never identified that body, and no body was ever found. The confession might refer to Harry Walker, who went missing November of 1893. Walker allegedly insured his life to Holmes for $20,000 and wrote to friends that he was working for Holmes in Chicago. So that claim was unconfirmed, but he does claim to have killed him. Baldwin Hanscom Williams, brother of Minnie and Nanny Williams, was allegedly murdered by Holmes in 1894. So he's like taken out Minnie's whole family. And I am suspecting, because it sounds like he takes out people that might be threatening to his way of life, or might know something. So it sounds to me like he's taking out people. But anyway, he's taken out her whole family, which is crazy. And then Charles Cole vanished in 1894, and that murder was confirmed. It doesn't say how he killed that person. So then there's the suspected murders, which is an extremely long list. So I'm just going to read through these pretty quickly, because there were so many, so I'm just going to read through them quickly. So an 86-year-old, creditor of Holmes named John DeBuell died, I'm not sure, apoplex, so I think he was, he was suffocated. April 17th of 1891 in the Castle drugstore. So he died in the drugstore that was on the first floor. He collapsed and died shortly after Holmes poured a black liquid down his throat, according to witnesses. Foul play was not suspected. In 1895, it was determined that his life had been insured and that Holmes had profited from his death. So again, it's a presumed death, that Holmes killed him, and it's crazy that there was witnesses saying that they seen that. Then in 1891, it is presumed that, or it's suspected that Emily Van Tassel disappeared after work at Holmes' drugstore. Holmes spoke of her in his confession in 1897, and his name was cited in the list of suspected victims, and the Tassel mother believed that she was a possible victim. So her mother even believed that Holmes killed her. Dr. Russler had an office in the castle and went missing in 1892, and he was mentioned in Holmes' writings. Kitty Kelly, stenographer of Holmes, also went missing in 1892. John Davis of Greenville, Pennsylvania, went to visit the 1893 World's Fair and vanished in 1920 and was declared legally dead. Harry Walker, again, I think we might have talked about him already, but he... Holmes had a life insurance policy on him of the $20,000. George Thomas went missing in June of 1894. and he was killed, and he says that he killed him and disposed of his body. Holmes confessed to the murder to his second wife. So he told his second wife that he killed that person. George Thompson was found, or was, let's see, on the Takabee River in June of 1894, and he killed him and disposed of his body. Holmes confessed to the murder to his second wife. So, yep. Milford Cole disappeared after receiving a telegram from Holmes to come to Chicago in July of 1894. Lucy Burbank. Burbank was found with human hair in the chimney flute of the castle. So she had some of her hair was found in the we call them chimneys, but they call them chimney flutes. So I don't know why her hair would be up there. So I don't know if he maybe stuffed her in there or what it was. It doesn't really tell us. So Holmes alleged that he to have killed 2 people in Lake County, Illinois in the 1890s. Their deaths were confirmed in 1919. 23 years after his execution, when the remains of an unknown man and woman were found on a farm. Sorry, my husband came in and he was handing me my car key. So then let's talk about now the presumed murders. So these are a little bit more in depth, and they might be some repeats of the names, but it does go in a little bit more in depth about these murders. So Holmes' mistress, 31-year-old Julia Smith, was the wife of Dr. Lawrence Connor. Okay, so Julia and Pearl Connor are the ones that were known to be killed by then. Ultimately, he claimed that he killed her during an abortion, and then Holmes, he wasn't good. I mean, he was never licensed or anything like that to carry out abortions. And then he claimed to have poisoned Pearl, and likely to poison Pearl. And partial of her skeleton was found when they searched his home, and it's presumed to be her skeleton because it was found, the skeleton was found to be between a 6 and 7-year-old child, which would be how old Pearl was at the time when he is saying that he killed Julia and Pearl. And then Emmeline Cargrand, I am butchering some of these names, was working for Holmes in May of 1892 and worked for about 6 months as a secretary due to her alleged cured alcoholism. Those who saw her weeks before her disappearance noted that she appeared to be having lost interest in Holmes and their relationship. So she was another mistress. He seemed to have a lot of mistresses. So he was another mistress. Or she was another mistress, but she had seen it stating that, that she had seemed to be losing interest. So authorities, when they did go and find that, they found that she was probably another victim of an attempted abortion by Holmes. Her empty luggage trunk was sent back to her mother in Indiana, and her skeleton was found by police at the home of a Chicago physician with the help of M.G. Chappell. So her skeleton is one of the ones that he sold to a physician. So when he was selling this, because I asked this same question, like, who are you selling? We're going to play with fire. Who are you selling cadavers to? Like, who is buying cadavers from you? So that's the answer. It's physicians and hospitals and stuff like that that are buying these cadavers from him. And then, of course, we also talked about Minnie Williams, who moved to Chicago and claimed that he met her at an employment office, though it is believed that he had actually met her in Boston several years earlier, and that's where. But Harry Gordon Holmes offered a job at the hotel as his stenographer, and she accepted. Holmes, of course, he then started pursuing her and he talked her into transferring the deed of her property in Fort Worth, Texas, to a man named Alexander Bond, which was an ally of Holmes. In April of 1893, Williams transferred the deed, with Holmes serving as the notary. Holmes later signed the deed over to Pritzl, which we'll get to who he is, giving him giving him the alias Benton T. Lemon. In the following month, Holmes and Williams, presenting themselves as husband and wife, rented the apartment in Chicago, Lincoln Park. Minnie's younger sister, 18-year-old Anna Nanny Williams, came to visit, and on July the 5th of 1893, she wrote to her aunt that she planned to accompany brother Harry to Europe. Now, I want you guys to remember that. She's planning to go to Europe with them. In it, she signed off in the message. Brother Henry, which is Holmes, says he need never trouble any more about me, financially or otherwise. He and his sister will see to me. I hope our hard days are over. Afterwards, neither Minnie nor Nanny were ever heard from or seen alive, and Holmes used Minnie's name in future scams. So, she's now his mistress, and he is now killing off her relatives, and he now got them to sign over their property to them. So again, just another scam, and then he killed them and claimed insurance money on all of them. That's the crazy part to me, is that he's getting all this insurance money. So the man has plenty of money right now. But the murder that eventually led to Pritzler's the end of Holmes was the Pritzker killings. Now, Holmes was arrested on November 17th of 1894 after being tracked down by a private investigator in July of 1895. Chicago police investigated Holmes' murder castle, but only circumstantial evidence such as human bones, like we talked about, Julie Connor, and the remains of her daughter, Pearl, which was they were the mistress and the child. They also found burned clothing, buttons, and a gold chain believed to be Minnie Williams, so the other mistress. So that was Minnie's stuff that they believed was found burnt inside of the human-size oven in the basement. But because all of that was circumstantial, he was put on trial for the Pritzl murders in Philadelphia because it was the clearest case of murder. So let's talk about them. So the Pritzker killings. So while working in a commercial bank, on Dearborn Street, Holmes met and became close friends with his 38-year-old Benjamin Freeline Pritzl, a carpenter with a criminal past. So he also had a criminal past. So them two bonded. And he was there looking at a coal bin that he had invented. And Holmes, then later they became friends, and Holmes used him as his right-hand man for several criminal schemes. The district attorney later described Pritzl as Holmes' tool and his creator. With insurance company pressing to prosecute him for arson, Holmes left Chicago in July of 1894. So he's, committing things, doing all kinds of things. And so now it's all closing in on him again, and he's leaving Chicago again. So he reappeared in Fort Worth, where he had inherited the property from the Williams sisters that he had convinced them to sign over to him, and then killed them. Here he was once attempted to, so there in Fort Worth is where he attempted to yet again build another place, another facility, or whatever you want to call it, without paying the builders and the people. So he's back at it again with his schemes in the same place. In July of 1894, Holmes was arrested briefly and jailed for the first time on the charges of selling mortgaged goods in St. Louis, Missouri. He was promptly bailed out, and while in jail, he struck up a conversation with a convict, an outlaw named Marion Hedgepeth, who was serving 25-year sentence. Anyway, so he was serving a 25-year sentence, and Holmes convinced him, hey, let's fake a death, right? So let's fake my death, and you'll get $500 commission in exchange for the name of a lawyer who can be trusted. So if you help me do this and help me find a lawyer, I'm going to give you $500 of the insurance money that I get from faking a death, right? So the guy gave him the name of a lawyer, St. Louis attorney named Joseph Howell. Dopeth is actually, it's Jepetha or something like that. Anyway, Howe thought Holmes' scheme was brilliant and agreed to participate. Nevertheless, Holmes' plan to fake his own death failed when the insurance company caught on, and then they didn't pay out the money. But then he concocted a similar plan with Pitzel. Okay, so he agreed. We're gonna call him Benjamin because his whole last name is so hard to pronounce. So Benjamin agreed to fake his own death. So now they're gonna fake Benjamin's death, and that his wife could collect on $10,000 of life insurance policy, which he was to split with Holmes and Howe. The scam, which was to take place in Philadelphia, called for Benjamin to set himself up as an inventor under the name of B.F. Perry, and then be killed by disfigured on a lab explosion. So Holmes was to find so basically Holmes is going to find a cadaver. They're going to blow something up, and then they're going to say, oh, this is Benjamin, and it's actually going to be under a different name, and he's dead now, so we get the insurance money. So they're going to find his body there and say that it's him and get the insurance. But instead, Holmes killed Benjamin on September 4th of 1894 by knocking him unconscious, and then with chloroform, they knocked him unconscious with chloroform and then set him on fire. And he confessed that he was still alive when he knocked him out, and he set them on fire still while he was alive. The autopsy report viewed that before he said it, that he actually didn't use chloroform, that he set him on fire before he used chloroform. So who really knows what he did? Show that the chloroform had been in the trial, it came out that he did administer chloroform to him, and there's lots of news articles that go back and forth with yes he did, no he didn't. So who really knows? Because again, it's fake news like we have now. But anyway, so Holmes collected the insurance payout and on the basis of the genuine genuine corpse, like it truly was Benjamin. So he collected the insurance money. Holmes then manipulated Pritzel's wife, Carrie Alice Canning, into allowing 3 of her 5 children to be placed in his custody. So the 3 children who were placed in his custody, then he would take them traveling. They were placed in his care, and it was Alice, who was 13, Nellie, who was 9, and then Howard, who was 7. Holmes and the 3 children traveled throughout the northeastern United States and into Canada. He's simultaneously escorted Carrie along routes, and all the while using various aliases and lying to Carrie concerning her husband's death and where her children's whereabouts. So this whole time he's communicating with Carrie and saying, I don't know where your husband is, I don't know what's going on, just lie after lie with the wife, and then he's not telling her where the kids are. So I read that look, we played with fire and nothing caught on fire. I'm doing much better with fire than I am sharp objects. So he then is traveling with these kids, and so the oldest 13-year-old Alice was writing to her mom, and I had found like where they had read some of the letters that she had wrote, because they did later find her letters that Holmes never sent. So I was reading some of them, and she was like begging her mother to like write her back, and it's kind of heartbreaking to kind of listen to, because I was listening to them honestly, and it's kind of heartbreaking to listen, because this kid's like, why aren't you writing me, Mom? Like, I would like to hear from you guys, and she's not getting anything back, but all the while it's because Holmes is not sending the letters off. So, in an even more like in a move where like he eventually, like, there were times where like they were staying down the street from the mom and he would still lie to the mom about where they were, staying at another location, with his current wife. But his current wife was so unaware of what was going on, she had no idea. Holmes later confessed to murdering Alice and Nellie on October the 25th of 1894. So he forced them into a large trunk, locked them inside. He drilled a hole in the lid of the trunk and put one end of a hose through the hole, attaching the other end to a gas line and asphyxiating the girls. Holmes buried their nude bodies in the cellar of his rental house on 16th Street and Vincent Street in Toronto. Frank Gear, a Philadelphia Police Department detective assigned to investigate. Let's see, I believe he later killed the boy also. I don't remember though how he killed him. So anyway, the Philadelphia Police Department detective assigned to the investigation of Holmes to find, so he was there. He was assigned to finding the 3 missing children. He began in June of 1894 and traced Holmes' steps, and found the decomposing body of the 2 girls in the cellar of the Toronto home. The detective wrote, "The deeper we dug, the more horrible the odor became. And when we reached the depth of 3 feet, we discovered what appeared to be the bones of a forearm of a human being." So this was a quotation of what he was saying. That's when they discovered the unsent letters that were written by the children and that Holmes had kept. This information led to further investigations of Holmes and Chicago's property and ultimately led to Indianapolis, where Holmes had rented a home in the Irvington neighborhood. Holmes was reported to have visited a local pharmacy and purchased drugs which he used to kill Howard. So that's how he killed Howard on October 10th of 1894 in a repair shop, to sharpen knives which he used to chop up the boy's body before he burned it. The boy's teeth and bones were found discovered in the home chimney. So again, he put someone's bones in the chimney. So again, he was arrested on November the 17th of 1894 after being tracked down by those private investigators. And as they're, building this case and get all this circumstantial evidence on him from the Chicago home, they realize that the only thing that they're going to get him on is the Benjamin case and his children. So in October of 1895, Holmes was out on trial for his murder and sentenced to death by hanging. Holmes stayed calm all the way to death and asked that his coffin be encased in cement and to prevent grave robbers from taking his corpse. And finally, on May 7th of 1896, Holmes was hung, and it is said that his neck did not break, and he slowly strangled to death for over 15 minutes before they pronounced him dead. So here's what's crazy to me. You're grave robbing, you're killing people and using their corpses, and you're selling their bones, and you're doing all of these things, but yet you don't want anyone to dig you up and use your corpse for anything. So that is just out there for me. But after death, the mysteries of the castle would go unexplained. So Patrick Quinlan, which was the caretaker, remember he had killed that girl because he thought that Patrick was interested in her, so he killed her. So the caretaker of the castle committed suicide, leaving a note that said, "I couldn't sleep." His relatives said that he had been haunted for several months and was suffering from hallucinations. Now, if you believe in the realm where ghosts are stuck between here and the afterlife, maybe it was not hallucinations, but the hauntings of the evils that had taken place in the castle. But who knows? In August of 1895, the castle was damaged by a fire. So it was reported that they seen 2 men run into the back end of the castle, and about 10-15 minutes later, these guys come running out. And one thing actually said 30 minutes later. You guys can hear my kids being so rowdy upstairs. So these guys run in, and then they come, and when they run back out, they're running out, and then it was followed by multiple explosions inside the castle, and the castle went up in flames. The fire gutted the hotel. It gutted the building, and the building remained standing. until 1938, when they demolished the building, and now the land is occupied by the Elwood Post Office. So again, if you believe in the realm between here and the afterlife, I wonder if people that work in that post office had seen some questionable things because of the grounds in which the post office was built on. Kind of like Indian grounds. Like, you know, you hear about like Indian ruins and like, or, you know, things like that, where are graveyards that have been being dug up and moved and then they build something on them. Like, you hear about the places being haunted because now their spirits are uneasy and all that stuff. So I just wonder, you know, I would be interested to know if anyone that works in that post office has had any creepy things happen. So H.H. Holmes, remember, had Clara, her first wife. They had a son. So he grew up to be an accountant, successfully distancing himself from his notorious father. Unlike his father, Robert lived a quiet life, raised in California by his mother. Holmes' daughter, Lucy, lived a quiet life as well, despite her father's lifestyle, moving to Minnesota and working as a school teacher and eventually marrying. She lived with her mother after her parents separated and avoided the limelight associated with her father. So both of his kids stayed separated from him. They had nothing to really do with him, and they just lived quiet lives until they passed away. Another descendant from Holmes, a great-great-grandson, Jeff Mugget. So he would be the descendant of Clara and Robert. So Clara would be his great-great-grandmother, and then Robert would be his great-grandfather. He started investigating H.H. Holmes, and he learned that he was related to H.H. Holmes. So then he started to start investigating to see what really the true story was. Well, then in 2017, he had Holmes's body dug up and exhumed to prove that he really was dead, because there were several rumors out there that H.H. Holmes actually escaped death. Even though people watched him hang to death, they believed that he was still alive. However, he also worked on a theory that H.H. Holmes was also the famous Jack the Ripper. So, to hear that story, you're going to have to come back and watch our next episode, which I can't wait to record. But this is our cup for today. This will be our H.H. Holmes cup. I'm going to add some little festive stuff to it. We'll see what I can find laying around here, and then I will show the final product on our next video. So come back next time for a little bit of craft and crime. Thanks for joining, and please remember to like and subscribe.